There was a time when the Earth was green in a way that feels almost impossible to imagine. Not simply greener, not just more lush, but fundamentally different. The air was thicker, the skies carried a different weight, and the ground itself supported forms of plant life that would struggle to exist under today's conditions. These were not just ancient plants. They were organisms shaped by environments so extreme, so unfamiliar, that their existence reveals a version of nature that no longer has a place in the modern world. To understand these plants, it becomes necessary to step back into a time when the boundaries of life were still being defined. Hundreds of millions of years ago, long before forests resembled anything recognizable, the Earth's atmosphere held significantly higher levels of carbon dioxide. Oxygen levels, too, fluctuated dramatically. In some periods, particularly during the Carboniferous, oxygen concentrations rose to levels far beyond what exists today. This created conditions that altered the way plants grew, reproduced, and interacted with their surroundings. In these ancient atmospheres, certain plants were able to reach extraordinary sizes. Giant lycophytes, such as lepidodendron, grew into towering structures that resembled trees, but were fundamentally different in their internal composition. Their trunks, marked by distinctive diamond-shaped patterns, were not made of dense wood like modern trees. Instead, they relied on a softer, more spongy internal structure supported by the surrounding environment. In today's lower oxygen, drier world, such a design would not be sustainable. But in the humid, oxygen-rich swamps of the Carboniferous, it allowed these plants to dominate entire landscapes. These swamp forests stretched across vast regions, particularly near the equator. The climate was warm and consistently wet, with little seasonal variation. The ground was often saturated with water, creating an environment where decomposition slowed significantly. As plant material accumulated over time, it formed thick layers that would eventually become coal. The plants that thrived here were adapted not just to survive in waterlogged conditions, but to depend on them. Among them were giant horsetails, known as calamites, which could grow several meters tall. Their segmented stems, reinforced by silica deposits, gave them both flexibility and strength. Unlike modern plants that rely heavily on seeds, many of these ancient species reproduced through spores. This method required moisture, as spores needed water to complete their reproductive cycle. In the constant humidity, one of the most striking examples of plants existing under unimaginable conditions comes from the Devonian period, when the first true forests began to form. These forests were not only biologically different, but also played a role in transforming the planet itself. As roots penetrated the soil, they accelerated the breakdown of rock, influencing the carbon cycle and contributing to long-term climate change. The plants were not just adapting to their environment, they were actively reshaping it. Yet the fossil record shows that many of these early forests were short-lived in geological terms. Environmental shifts, including changes in sea levels and atmospheric composition, led to the decline of certain plant groups. Archaeopteris, one of the earliest tree-like plants, thrived for millions of years, but eventually disappeared. Its extinction marked the end of a lineage that had once been central to early forest ecosystems. As time progressed into the age of dinosaurs, plant life continued to evolve under conditions that would still feel unfamiliar today. Flowering plants had not yet become dominant. Instead, landscapes were filled with ferns, cycads, and conifers. These plants formed extensive forests, but their structure and diversity differed from modern ecosystems. Without flowers, there were no fruits in the form commonly recognized today. Reproduction relied on cones, spores, and exposed seeds. Then, during the early Cretaceous, flowering plants began to emerge. This development introduced a new set of adaptations that would eventually reshape the entire plant kingdom. Flowers allowed for more targeted reproduction, often involving interactions with pollinators. Fruits provided protection and means of dispersal for seeds. These innovations gave flowers